The assessment of the MSc dissertation involves two components. The first of these components is the dissertation document, which you've received guidance from your supervisor on. The second component is the 10-minute video presentation that's going to showcase your research. So this presentation here is just going to give you a bit of guidance regarding that presentation or video component. So this is worth 10% of the grade of your MSc dissertation, and it is a compulsory component. So you're required to submit this. If you don't submit this, then a grade of not present will be assigned to your full dissertation, and that's a failing grade. So it is 100% required that you do submit a presentation video or a video showcase along with your dissertation document. I'm going to start by outlining what's required and then give you a layout of how I would approach the presentation. Now, there is no fixed presentation layout for this component. The idea is that you use this opportunity to showcase your research the best way you can. I'll talk then about presentation skills and the ability to do a practice run and why that's so important, and then focus on the content of what you're actually including in the presentation. So the why is important is something that I'm going to talk about regarding justifications of decisions made throughout your dissertation. Then I'm going to finally talk about how you actually record on Microsoft PowerPoint and how you save that as an MP4 to be able to submit on Blackboard. So you know at this point that you're required to submit a 10-minute presentation. So that's a maximum of 10 minutes. The examiners will not be reviewing anything past the 10-minute mark. Just to make this fair to all students, you're literally only required to give us 10 minutes of content, no more, but you can go less than that. So don't be spinning it out to 10 minutes if you don't have that much to fill the 10 minutes. But I think with anyone doing an MSc dissertation, they're going to find 10 minutes quite difficult. The skill here is that you try and get everything that's important captured within that 10-minute time slot. So just to be fair to everybody, the examiners have been asked to stop reviewing the video at 10 minutes. So if you submit a 20-minute video, then the examiners are going to only watch the first 10 minutes of that. So just to be clear up front in the beginning, it's only 10 minutes that is required, and the examiners will be asked not to review or evaluate anything after the 10-minute point. So the presentation should be completed in Microsoft PowerPoint, or at least part of the presentation should be included as a PowerPoint, with some slides with information such as your name, your student number, the title of your research aims, objectives, that kind of stuff. It can include video elements. It can include a screencast of your artifact. It should have a voiceover. So you have to be clear that this presentation takes the place of what would normally be a formal viva. So you need to submit a presentation or video that includes voiceover of you explaining every element for you to be able to get the maximum marks in this area. So it's also required that at least some of this presentation or video will include live video, just so that we can authenticate that it's actually you recording your voice to the video. So I'll talk about how you can do that recording in Microsoft PowerPoint at a later point. If you want to include screencast elements, there's no requirement for you to have your camera enabled at that point when you're recording the screencast, but for some of the presentation at least, you should have your camera available and your face should be visible for at least some of the presentation, but all of the presentation should have a voiceover. And there's really an important aspect here where your examiners have an ability to call you to Viva if required. And really the only requirements that I can see from an examiner's perspective would be if they can't make out what you're saying, so if they don't understand the presentation, or if there's any form of plagiarism or malpractice, you'll be called to present in front of the examiners live at that point. So to give yourself the best experience of going through this process, make sure that what you're saying can be understood by your examiners. It's really important that they're able to assess what's there, and that everything is able to be heard. You're not rushing through and they're not able to understand. So take your time when making your points. It's important that you make all of the main points within your presentation, and there will be other elements of your dissertation that they're going to get from the document. So not everything needs to be in the presentation. It's really just the highlights, the main points of your dissertation. As I have said previously, there is no set presentation layout for this showcase presentation. So this is just a suggested layout, but you don't have to follow this. You can go your own way and you have full creative control over this. So I would suggest, if you're starting the presentation, it would be best to give a brief overview of the research project and the motivation for the study. So what is it you're looking at and why is it you're looking at it? Then go into a bit of a literature review where you talk about how it compares to other studies. So just really the main studies that are very relevant to this research. You don't need to include a full succinct literature review here. It's really just focusing on those main components that are very similar to your research, and talk about how it compares and crucially how it's different. So you could talk about that as part of that sort of block where you're given the overview, the motivation, and then comparing it to other research. And then after that there's a real break where it goes into design, implementation, challenges, limitations, results, where that's pretty much all around your work that's been completed. So the design will be if you put together like a model design, if you put together an architecture design, whatever is included generally in your chapter 3 of your dissertation will be highlighted here. And in the implementation, at this point, it might be good to actually come out of the presentation and go into a screencast or a video where you explain your implementation as you're showing it. It helps the examiners understand a bit better what it was that you've actually created, because for the majority of the programs in the computing department, an artifact is required. Now, there are some that don't require an artifact, such as the cyber psychology, but the others will require some form of an implementation or artifact as such. So really hitting home what that is. Sometimes a screencast is better than just going through a presentation slide. Talk about challenges and limitations. So limitations regarding how far you've got and what wasn't completed, but also challenges that you've seen along the way. So it's really important for your examiners that this is a learning experience. You are doing a course and you are supposed to be learning as part of this course. So a lot of what you're learning should be documented there within the challenges. So if you've received any, errors while you were developing, that would be there in the challenges. Change to environment, if you're using something that's open source, deprecated, those kind of challenges should be outlined there. Talk about your results, and don't just present your results. Talk about the significance of the results and compare it with other research that exists. Then evaluate your research overall, evaluate your own personal performance. So how did you find doing the dissertation? Evaluate it in the perspective of the research that's gone on previously in this area, and then talk about future work, how your project can be extended. So it's very difficult to fit all of that inside 10 minutes, but it is entirely possible if you just focus on the main points. So think about this as the headlines of each of those sections. a couple of bullet points in each of these sections that you're going to be discussing. Your examiners will have access to your full dissertation document where they'll be able to get more information about all of these elements. So don't try and capture everything. It's important to just focus on the main highlights of each of these sections to showcase your research in the best possible way. A practice run is incredibly important. This is the culmination of your MSc. So this is the equivalent of 3 modules that you've completed at MSc level. So it is high risk, and you want to make sure that you can get the maximum grade that is possible for you to get with your research. So make sure to put a bit of time into practicing your presentation. So the presentation is going to be 10 minutes maximum. So this roughly works out 1 minute per slide. Although this is flexible, some slides you'll spend more time on, some you'll spend less time on. It's important that you do time this out because it's difficult to get everything within the 10-minute time slot. So it's going to take you multiple attempts to record this presentation to make sure that your timings work out, because I have previously outlined that your examiners will stop at 10 minutes. So all of the important aspects should be there within the first 10 minutes of your video presentation. So practice your timings, listen back, see what can be improved, how much of this can be condensed further. It's important that you use your tone, your pace, and your facial expressions on the camera, because examiners won't have your body language that they would normally have during an in-person viva. So make sure to put a bit of effort into pacing your presentation well. Don't be rushing it. Use, inflection in your tone, use your facial expressions, just to make sure that you're making this as interesting as possible. This is a showcase of your research. So speak clearly and slowly. If examiners can't understand you, then you're not going to be getting marks for that element that they're marking within the marking rubric. So it's important that if you're putting the effort in, put it in fully, do your practice run, record slide by slide. It makes it so much easier when you're doing it slide by slide, because you can listen back and refine and change only that one slide, and it helps you monitor timings as well. And don't worry so much about the ums and ahs and these things that we do, as long as they're not distracting, as long as it's not too much. If you're doing too much of it within a slide, then I would go back and record that slide again. So it's up to you what you're happy with, but just keep going over it, practicing it, and make sure you have multiple opportunities here. This isn't a one-time viva where you go and attend and whatever happens during that session is everything. You have multiple opportunities here where you can go practice run, record, re-record. So use that opportunity as best you can. The biggest error that most dissertation students make is that they focus on the how, so how they completed the task, but they don't provide much information regarding the justifications that were made for why they decided to take the steps that they did. So I just want to go through a bit of information as to why the why is important. So in the motivation, you're going to talk about why you chose this research topic. So the why is really important here. Why did you choose this data set of all the data sets that were available, of all the languages that you could have used, of all of the software tools you could have used? Why did you choose this one? Why did you choose this approach? Why did you choose this study design or experiment design? So of the many different options that were available, why did you pick this? And generally, there is an educated reason as to why you did pick this. So it was the best of all of the options because of X, Y, and Z. It was, sometimes with software, it was open source, or you had a license through the college, or whatever the reason may be. It's important that you explicitly say, because examiners wonder a lot whenever they're reading through dissertations why decisions were made, and a lot of the times that why isn't actually answered either within the document or as part of the presentation. So it's really important that you talk about that. And then at the end, why did you measure your project in this way? You'll have to form some form of an evaluation after you've completed your research. So there will be results. Why are the results significant? How do they compare with other research that's been completed? All of this is really important. It's not just presenting what the facts are, it's your interpretation of it as well. So why you've made these decisions, why you're viewing it in this way. So the why is really important. So make sure that you capture that within your presentation, but crucially also within your document. So the whole purpose of research is to explore the unknown. So in a lot of cases, we don't achieve our initial objectives because we know information now after completing the research that we didn't know when we started. Some things are generally more complex than you initially anticipate whenever you're starting out the process. So it's important, if you have got limitations, which I'm sure all of you probably do, explain the challenges that you've encountered along the way, the resources you use to help you overcome the challenges. So, like, there's generally a large community, open source community, Stack Overflow, places like that, where you can reach out to others in the community to try and help you with problems. So talk about this. This is part of the process, and it's healthy to discuss this. Provide support and literature from others that have experienced this problem. So if after doing your literature review, you've seen a common problem that other researchers have approached, of the way that they've approached it, and it's the same problem that you're experiencing, then it's really important that you share this as well within your research to build the case so that no one else goes down this avenue after you, and make it clear that you've exhausted all the options. You didn't give up at the point of the first limitation. You've tried to investigate it further and push and push and push to find out more information until the point where you have exhausted all of the options. And then finally outline how this has impacted on your project and how your project changed as a result, or how your results aren't as significant because of this limitation. There's always some impact to your research because of limitations, so make sure to make that clear. I had said previously that it's required that you create this presentation in PowerPoint. Now you can embed videos and a lot of other different things within it, but the core needs to be a PowerPoint presentation that's recorded. So I'm just going to talk through how to do that within PowerPoint. So on the ribbon menu at the top, you see File, Home, Insert, Draw, all those options along the top. You're looking for the record option, and then record from beginning, or record from slide if you want to pick it up at another point. Once you've completed that step and selected the option on the ribbon, then it'll open a screen, and it's this screen that's at the bottom of the screen here that you can see, where it's got the record button on it. It has the time, it has edit, the option for muting your mic, putting on your camera. You can see the options are all there for you to be able to record. So it's important, because this is an examination, that you do put your camera on. So make sure that you're recording in an area where there's nobody going to be in the background. Make sure that you're using a headset if the mic on your device isn't very strong. So just prepare for making sure that this presentation is as polished as it can be. So the video is there firstly to show that you have actually completed the dissertation. Your face is there on camera, and it was you that completed this presentation video. But it's also there for your examiners. Like, as I said before, your body language isn't going to be shown. All they have to work on is your face and your voice, your tone. So make sure that you use everything that's available to you to try and make sure that you've got a high quality presentation. So once you've finally completed the recording of the presentation, it's important that you save it as a video format. So I would recommend that you save it as an MP4 file. And you can do this either using the export function. Whenever you're in the record screen, there's an option to export it as a video, or you can do file save as. So I'm just going to talk through that on the next slide. So if you're not in the record screen, within the record screen, you can just do export to video and save it as an MP4 that way. If you're not in that screen and you're just in the ordinary presentation PowerPoint screen, then you can do file save as in the older versions or save a copy in the newer versions. And then in the drop down menu under the file name, select MPEG-4 video. So that's MP4. Once you've done this, now it is going to be converting this to a video, so it does take a bit of time to run, so just be patient and you'll see a line like a progress bar on the bottom of the PowerPoint window, just giving you an indication on the progress. Once this is done, then it'll save the MP4 file, and this is the file that you upload onto Blackboard. It's important that you do a standard video file, because your examiners will then be able to watch that directly on Blackboard whenever they're doing their examination, rather than having to download a lot of video files onto their PC, because these are generally quite large files. So the best format would be MP4. So that's it for the presentation guidance. If you have any questions, in the first instance, please talk to your supervisor and let them guide you through this process. If there's any questions that you can't get an answer to from your supervisor, then feel free to reach out to the MSc Dissertation Coordinator using the dissertations.donegal@atu.ie email address. Okay, thanks very much.